This is Vecna Eve of Ruin. It's an adventure celebrating 50 years of D&D. It is the last full adventure before the revised rules are released. It's for levels 10 to 20, it's 250 pages long, and it has 32 maps, 35 monsters, and 3 magic items. And it costs $60 USD. This is a first look review, obviously. I've not spent a year playing through this adventure with a full table, but obviously my full year of playing through it will look very differently from your full year playing through it, since we tend to use these adventures as loose guidelines that we sometimes follow. At least that's how I tend to use them. I usually start at the beginning, obviously, but then just take the major plot hooks and some of the locations and NPCs, then shift everything around a bit. Then I end up at the same place the adventure ends. I have a few canon events, if you will, that are set in stone, and everything else is incredibly flexible. It's why I think that reviews for adventures like this, on the whole, are pretty useless, because me having an amazing time with it is no guarantee that you will have an amazing time with it. That being said, I do want to review this product the best I can as a base product, comparing it to previous books and the potential it has to become a great campaign. Simply because I do think this is a big release. Arguably one of, no, the biggest releases D&D 5e has ever had. Not because of its actual size or the amount of content in it, but just because it's a culmination of almost every official 5e adventure so far. It's using D&D's and Stranger Things' most famous villain. It's taking inspiration from Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. It's supposed to be the end of an era and the start of a new one. And if this is a success, I do believe it's going to change the way that Wizards are going to be releasing adventures in the future. It's also one of the first books I've seen from WotC in a while that is explicitly made for long-term D&D fans, rather than newer players and DMs. So I want to get into the production quality of this thing. Not just the physicality of it, but also the layout, the writing, and the art. And that's gonna all be non-spoilery, but then I will talk about the story a little bit. Maybe the items, the places, the monsters. It's also a pretty big MacGuffin in the book, as well as an interesting mechanic that I think is going to be controversial. And that will be getting into spoilery territory, just in case you really wanted to avoid it. But I'll let you know before that section. Well, first off, the production quality of the book itself. This is the special edition of the book, only available in game stores. And honestly, it is very nice. I think they did a great job on this. Vecna's hand here is raised foil, same with the stroke around the letters. The light reflects off it in like a really cool way, and it's surprisingly satisfying to run your fingers across it. The spine also has the same raised lettering and is pretty minimalistic. If I compare it to the last limited edition cover I bought, Vandelver Below, Vecna is way more minimalistic, which I personally like. And the back has this really cool circular symbol pattern on it that does remind me of like the Infinity Stones from the Avengers or the Zelda Ocarina of Time medallions. Honestly, I can't stop rubbing my hand over this. The art on the non-collector's edition is still really cool, showing Vecna himself casting a powerful spell with different settings from the game in the background. And you know, it's also available online in digital format, where I guess the cover doesn't really matter. Also, what won't matter if you grab the digital version is the weight and feel of this. It does feel pretty hefty, and that is thanks to the high page count. There's 256 pages. This was 220 pages, but also due to the poster map in the back, which I've been saving to look at for this video. And you get to watch me try and rip it out without ripping this or the pages of the book, which normally happens. Oh man. Awesome, unripped. So, you know what, this might be getting into spoilery territory, so I will save the reveal of the map until we get to that point in the video. The art in this book is really nice. I especially like the NPC design and the maps. The maps are just really nice to look at, and I mostly never use official maps in my games, but I may do with this one. The monster designs in here, as far as the artwork goes, are really cool. I mean, some are generic, but there are a surprising amount in here where I look at the image and think, I have to know more about this creature. It's so interesting to look at. What can it do? What's its backstory? And the fact that there are so many monsters, over 30, which is really nice. It's definitely a book that you can dip into and strip for spare parts when it comes to high-level monsters, locations, and just full chapters. You just need to change a few details to make these chapters fit as fetch quests in any high-level campaign. Because of that, you can kind of use this as a little bit of a monster manual for high-level play while we wait for the new monster manual to come out next year. Okay, let's get into the spoilery section of this review. And it's only light spoilers, once again, but you have been warned. The story is pretty much that Vecna wants to remake the world by casting a pretty big spell. And he's fundamentally using his cultists to gather components that he needs for that spell. Your player characters get pulled into the whole thing by accidentally becoming linked with Vecna, like psychically. Then they are approached by powerful forces for good that want to stop Vecna. Then they get sent on a chase around the multiverse across a plethora of locations, collecting parts for a powerful item that will help them put an end to Vecna's evil plan. There's also a twist in there that I don't think I need to spoil, but no, I think it's going to be fun to roleplay and have this big reveal happen. But for it to fully hit the players in the right way, I think I will have to tweak it a fair bit. And then the whole story does feel kind of clumsy. Like the players are just falling around drunkenly through the story and everything just happens to line up for them. There are a fair few coincidences that just make the story work. That being said, I do think that D&D often does need this level of clumsiness just to make sure things move at a good pace. This isn't a movie or a novel. Like it could be the best story ever written, but your players are just going to change that completely anyway. The story here is not meant to be this complete beautiful thing. It's just there to make sure that your players move on to the next point so they can create the beautiful story. So this is clumsy. It is a little bit obvious, maybe even a little predictable, but it's just scaffolding, just there to hold everything together. And I think for that purpose, it does a pretty good job. The only real gripe I have with it is a little bit railroady, which is often the nature of modules like this, but this one especially just doesn't leave much breathing room for the players. There is a section where there is a bit of downtime and they do have a hub that they can kind of return to and do their own stories a little bit, but I think if I ran this adventure as is, it would take me a full year, and by the end of it, my players would be exhausted because it's just non-stop. And I think I will have to go into this and just create more pockets of breathing room around the place, just to give the players a chance and some time to explore their own characters and the party more. But that's subjective, that's how I like to DM my games. You might have a table and you might be the kind of DM that likes this non-stop high stakes adventure. But for me, I almost feel like I might play through half of this and then take a few month break while I play a lighter hearted adventure with my table and then come back to it and finish the last half. You know, a bit like the Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame movies were split into two. And while we're on the spoilery section of it all, the game has a mechanic that I don't think I like because it just feels silly to me. And this is a subjective thing again, but I'm probably going to change it. It's the idea of secrets. Secrets are incredibly powerful in this book. Once you have this psychic link to Vecna, valuable secrets, powerful secrets, become magical, fundamentally. If the players learn a quote-unquote valuable secret, let's say about an NPC, they can either save this secret until the end boss fight, and it will help them in some way, or they can whisper the secret to no one, just to the air, and get advantage on D20 rolls for 1 minute. And the whole party gets the advantage, but then the secret is lost to the ether, and they no longer have the secret. Now, I love the idea of one-time use consumables, but for me, it's specifically the idea of secrets having this power that I don't really like. For one, what counts as a valuable secret? Everyday secrets don't count, so it has to be a big secret. But where's the line on that? The book gives you a few secrets for the players to discover every chapter, but what if I introduce my own plot and NPCs on the side, and I introduce a ton of big secrets? Will I then make the game unbalanced because I've introduced too many NPCs with secrets? I don't know, it's a weird one. Also, the secret loses its power if anyone but the party and the original owner of the secret finds out about it. And while part of me does like the originality of this idea that we do create magic and power, but by withholding the information, like it is powerful, it just becomes something bigger than it is very Doctor Who. I'm just dreading explaining this mechanic to my players. And once they understand the mechanic, I'm dreading them either hyper-focusing on secrets, trying to get secrets out of every NPC they meet ever, and going out their way and forgetting about Vecna's evil plan completely, and just it being a secret collection game, or them forgetting about it straight away and never using any of the secrets and it just becoming a forgotten about thing. This may just be complete preference, or I may have just missed something in the book and I just don't understand how secrets work fully. But I can't help but feel that it would have been simpler and easier just to use some other kind of consumable magic items, components that players could collect instead of this idea of valuable secrets. But I don't want to sound negative here, because while I don't think the story is that memorable, and I may not like secrets, the true strength of this adventure is variety. Every location is different from the last, like very different. And as a DM, you get to play with a lot of different styles and tones. Also, it's a high-level adventure, and from looking at it, and I'll see how true this actually is after I play it, but it actually looks pretty balanced and sturdy, like it won't fall apart completely, which can happen a lot with high-level play. This is a book for D&D players who have played a few times, probably gone through a few different WotC adventures, but haven't dabbled too much in those levels 10 to 20. It's fundamentally made for my players and my table. And because it's split into so many different locations and sections, I can replace stuff really easily. For example, I'm running Phandelver Below right now, heavily homebrewed, but before that I ran Call of the Netherdeep with the same table, different characters. And now my players have almost 2 level 10-ish campaigns under their belt and multiple characters that are pretty much level 10 that they can choose from to play this. And I think some are going to keep playing their Phandelver characters and others are going to go back to the original Call of the Netherdeep campaign and take characters from there. And we're going to mismatch the crew, which I think is going to be really interesting and fun. And I can take out locations that are in here that they've never been to as players or characters, and replace them with locations and NPCs from these books that my players are familiar with. And that feels surprisingly easy to do. So now my players can just grab the characters they love and we can just full on sprint to level 20. Visit some old haunts and some new ones too. And I think that's where the true magic of this book lies. It's not just another standalone adventure. I mean, it can be, but I think the intention is for it to be a continuation of old adventures. And not just a continuation, but a high-level conclusion to your players' characters' stories. The only real negative issue I had with this book story-wise, I do have some other non-story related gripes, which I'll get to in a second. But it's that Vecna himself, the guy in the title, is barely in this book. He's a glorified final boss, and that's about it. There are other big bads in the campaign that are much more in the forefront than him. And I can only imagine the amount of times that I'm going to have to remind my players about Vecna and his big evil plan, and just how much of a threat he is. Because the players don't really see it that much. Though I do plan on actually setting up Vecna to be someone who is feared in my current campaign as I come to the end of it, just to make my players somewhat aware of who they are beforehand. I might also gender bend Vecna to subvert some expectations, but we'll see. Oh, and here's that map that I was talking about earlier. The Sanctum on one side and a bunch of smaller maps from the game on the other side. It's pretty cool. Not entirely necessary, but pretty cool. The only other issues I had with this book was the purchasing of it. They kind of fumbled the marketing for this, in my opinion. A while back, the marketing said that if you pre-ordered the book on D&D Beyond, you'd get the digital edition early. So I always thought, as it was coming up to release, I would pre-order it and I would get the digital edition early and be able to look through it. But a few weeks ago, that marketing, that promise of an early release disappeared from the website, where it now just said you'll get the digital edition on release when the physical edition is released. And that's a small gripe, that's kind of annoying. They took a deal away, which is their prerogative, I guess. They can do that. Maybe in the extreme small print of the original advertisement, it did say something like that. But it also didn't make it obvious that it was going to be released to local game stores early as well. I got this a few days early from my local game store, which is cool. It's nice that they're releasing them to local game stores early, but if you go online and look at all the marketing for this, it says it's released on the 21st, when in reality, it had been out for a week. And that's my issue. Just all the marketing information, the communication around this release left me confused. Like, it could definitely be more clear. And I only bring this up because the way we purchase and receive these products, in my mind, is part of the product experience. And while when this video is released, the book should be fully out in all its forms, I think it's important to talk about just for future reference, because Wizards of the Coast are not good at communication, and I want them to be better, so I'm calling them out. But one thing they have done, which I do kind of like, is a little collaboration with the game Dead by Daylight, a video game where you either play survivors in like a horror movie, where you're trying to get away from a serial killer or monster, or you play as the monster itself trying to kill the other people. Well, with this collaboration, they're putting Vecna into the game as a playable monster, which, you know, is kind of fun. And I always like the idea of D&D wheedling its way into other nerd fandoms. I love D&D getting some recognition. I understand when WotC approaches this, it's all about marketing and reach and making more money and doing all that stuff. But in general, I think widening the D&D net, getting it in other places, getting it seen, the movies, the TV shows, the games, I think all of that, yeah, makes Wizards of the Coast more money. But it also just improves and expands the culture, which is really good, and just increases the chance of me being in a bar, chatting to a stranger I don't know, and then being into D&D. It just increases that chance the more popular D&D gets. And love or hate Wizards of the Coast, or being different to them, they are the company that has the biggest reach when it comes to this widening of the D&D net. Except for maybe Critical Role, Dimension 20, and the production of Stranger Things. But you know, while it may be a little bit gimmicky to have collaborations with other companies, I think overall it has a net positive effect on the D&D fandom. But honestly, overall, as a D&D adventure module goes, if you're specifically looking for high-level, epic, Marvel-style play, then this book is perfect for you. Though do expect to do some tweaking, but I think that's always going to be the case with adventures like this. If you're looking for just inspiration for high-level play, and maybe you want to strip it for parts and take some monsters out of here, some NPCs, some plot hooks, all that good stuff, and put it into your own campaign, then I think this book's pretty good for that too. And if you were looking for a cool collector's edition to commemorate 50 years of D&D that will look good on your shelf, then yeah, this is a book for you. But if you were looking for anything else, like a more laid-back adventure, a less railroady one, or something with a really present, interesting bad guy, or you know, you just didn't want to play high-level D&D, then this book's not for you. But if you had a good time with this video, then a subscribe to this channel will give you advantage on all D20 rolls for 1 minute. Thanks for watching.